The first time I realized an HOA could ruin your life, it wasn't with a fine, it was with muffins, dry as packing peanuts, sitting on my porch like a threat in a cardboard box. I'm not even kidding, blueberry muffins, store-bought, and somehow they still tasted like regret. And taped to the top was a note that basically said, in the sweetest fake handwriting imaginable, "Friendly reminder your trash bins were out too long, also I'll be using your garage this week," like she was borrowing a cup of sugar instead of annexing my property. That's Karen Delaney for you. High heels, clipboard, power blouse energy, the kind of woman who smiles like she's already got you in a spreadsheet. Pine Needle Estates had rules, sure, but Karen ran those rules like she was auditioning for Suburban Dictator, and everybody just let her, because that's what people do when they're tired and they've got mortgages and they don't want to be the problem neighbor, right? My grandfather, Jack Madison, was not everybody. Grandpa Jack is 77, a retired veteran, the type who chews a toothpick like it owes him money, and he's got this look, like he's always halfway through deciding whether something is funny or a threat. Most days he's calm, grumbly, the usual, but that morning, after he read that muffin note, he started pacing our kitchen like a caged lion in socks. "She's trying to claim territory," he said, tapping the note like it was a land deed. "Next thing you know, she'll annex the lawn and declare your bedroom a community conference room." I laughed until 2 trucks rolled up. Not little pickup trucks either. 2 massive commercial-looking beasts, one black, one gray, the kind you'd expect to see outside a government building. No company logo, no rental markings, just a tiny HOA emblem near the back with like a little tattoo that said, "Yes, we're the bad guys." Karen waved from her Lexus like it was a parade. Then the drivers, like it was the most normal Tuesday in America, opened our garage and started backing those trucks inside. Grandpa didn't say a word for 2 full minutes, which for him is basically a medical emergency. Then he turned to me, dead serious, and said 5 words I will never forget. "Get me the padlocks, boy." Now, you might think I would have stopped him, called my mom, called a lawyer, called literally anyone, but when a man who once disarmed a live grenade using duct tape and a fishing lure asks you for padlocks, you don't start negotiating. You just move. I handed him the locks. Grandpa moved with this terrifying calm, locked the manual latch, locked the electric, jammed a metal bar across the inside like he was sealing up Fort Knox. Then he looped a chain through the handles, triple knotted it, zip-tied the ends like he was packaging evidence, stepped back, wiped his hands on a rag, and muttered, "Let's see her temporary ordinance override that." And that's the sound that kicked off the war, the garage door slamming shut with a thick metallic bang, like a cannon going off in the suburbs. Birds exploded out of the trees. A dog howled 3 streets over. Even old Mr. Murphy dropped his gardening shears like he'd just heard gunfire. 20 minutes later, Karen came back, strutting up our driveway in heels that clicked like a warning system, hair perfect, clipboard in hand, smile sharp enough to open mail. "Jack," she said, sugary sweet, "those trucks are HOA property. You can't legally." Grandpa lifted his phone to his ear, didn't even look at her. "Yeah, Sheriff, I got 2 unauthorized vehicles on private property. Might be an attempted hostile acquisition, might also be domestic terrorism. Hard to say these days." Karen's smile cracked like old paint. Now Pine Needle Estates does not see a lot of police action. The most dramatic event in years was when Mrs. Treenan's poodle got into her wine stash and then aggressively tried to hump the mayor's leg at the 4th of July barbecue, and people talked about that for months. So when Sheriff Dale's cruiser rolled in 10 minutes later, neighbors came out like it was parade day. Bathrobes, iced coffees, dog leashes, the whole suburban audience. Sheriff Dale stepped out holding his coffee, like it was too early for whatever this was. He looked at the trucks, then Karen, then Grandpa with his arms crossed like a bouncer, and sighed. "Well, looks like I walked into a homeowner feud again." Karen marched over with a stack of printed pages that smelled like toner and delusion. Section 12.4c clearly states that in the event of equipment overflow. "They ain't equipment," Grandpa cut in. "They're trucks. My garage ain't a depot, and my grandson ain't a warehouse manager." Dale raised an eyebrow at me. I did the little shrug that says, "I'm just here for the emotional damage." Dale gave Karen the bad news, calm and official. Without written consent, you can't store stuff in somebody's garage. Even under HOA rules, private property still matters. Karen sputtered like someone unplugged her from her power source. But I am the HOA. "And I," Grandpa said, patting the chain, locked the door. Dale left us with a warning to handle it civilly, which was hilarious because nothing about this was going to be civil. That night Karen tried to cut the chain. I heard her outside around midnight, whispering like a cartoon villain. Grandpa was waiting, sitting by the window like he was hunting. The second he saw her, he flipped the switch on the motion sensor sprinklers. She got blasted so hard she slipped, landed in a puddle, and let out a scream that sent raccoons sprinting like they owed rent. The next morning, the neighborhood gossip lit up like fireworks, Mrs. Pine baked a cake that said Team Grandpa, somebody printed t-shirts, and the pizza guy gave Grandpa a free large with extra sausage like he was a war hero. It would have been funny if I hadn't had this itchy feeling in my stomach, like we'd just poked a hornet's nest that knew our schedule. Because the next day, Grandpa and I cracked the garage door just enough to peek into one of those trucks. Just curiosity, just a quick look, expecting folding chairs, banners, maybe a sad box of HOA flyers. Instead we saw monitors, cameras, microphones, labeled folders, names, addresses, notes, stuff that looked less like community storage and more like surveillance gear. Grandpa stared for a long second, then said, real quiet, "Son, we ain't dealing with a power-tripping lawn queen anymore. We're dealing with something big." That's when the whole thing shifted. This wasn't just Karen being annoying. This was Karen running an operation. The next morning she dropped an official-looking envelope in our mailbox like she was serving court papers. Emergency HOA board meeting. Obstruction of community resources. Unneighborly behavior. The whole dramatic menu. Grandpa read it, laughed for 30 seconds straight, then used the paper to scoop up a particularly defiant squirrel turd from the bird feeder. "We're going," he said, wiping his hands. "But we ain't going quietly." That HOA clubhouse meeting felt like walking into a trap. Folding chairs arranged in an accusatory semicircle, neighbors whispering, Karen at the front under a poster that read Community First, preserving order in our homes, like she was running a cult with a budget. She launched into her speech about operational integrity, and Grandpa leaned back with sunglasses on indoors because of course he did. "Karen," Grandpa said, "you parked 2 mystery trucks in my garage without permission. You're lucky I didn't strip them for parts." Gasps. Karen narrowed her eyes and whipped out documents with a flourish like a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat. Ordinance 42B, subsection E, blah blah blah. Grandpa didn't even look at the paper. "That ordinance was voted down in 2011, he said. "I was there. I vetoed it myself. Original copies laminated and stuck to my fridge." That's the thing about Grandpa. He's petty, but he's prepared. The room started murmuring, and Karen could feel her grip slipping, so she tried to go nuclear. "You have 48 hours to release the trucks or we pursue legal action. Fines, community service, removal of privileges." Grandpa stood up, pulled out printed photos we'd taken, images of cameras, microphones, labeled folders. He held them up like receipts. "These trucks are loaded with surveillance gear," he said, voice cutting through the room. "Hidden cameras, listening devices, folders with personal data on folks in this very room." At first people didn't get it, then it hit them like cold water. Somebody shouted, "Is that why she knew about my gnome collection?" Another guy yelled, "She fined me for a weed that didn't even exist." Karen tried to talk over them, claiming it was visual inspections and voluntary reports. Grandpa turned to the crowd, eyebrows raised. "Anybody here volunteer to report on their neighbors?" Dead silence. Karen stormed out yelling about slander and lawyers, but the vibe in that room had changed. People weren't scared anymore. They were angry. Back home, Grandpa turned the living room into what he called Command Center Alpha. Photos spread out, HOA member list, names matched to folders. Turns out he'd kept every HOA mailer since 1999, alphabetized, color-coded. I always thought he was a hoarder with a filing fetish. But no, Grandpa was stocking ammo for suburban war. We waited until after dark and went back into the truck, fully this time. The air inside smelled like plastic and cold electronics. Drawers labeled visual logs, DVDs stacked by house number and date. We popped one into a portable player and watched grainy footage of a neighbor's backyard. Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous, just private. Intimate. Creepy. Then we found paper files with candid photos, notes about routines, arguments, illnesses. One sticky note literally said leverage, like this was some cheap spy movie. And then we found ours, Madison, thin folder, but inside was a timeline of every HOA fight Grandpa had ever had, every sarcastic letter he mailed back, every meeting he skipped. At the bottom, one line made my skin go cold. Possible risk of disruption if activated, engage plan. Grandpa's face went still, the kind of still that scares you more than yelling. He just started taking photos, everything fast, methodical, then locked it back up like nothing happened. When we got inside, I said, "We call the police, right? We have proof." Grandpa shook his head. "Not yet. If we call right now, she panics, she vanishes, she destroys evidence we do this careful. We give her enough rope to hang herself." And that's when Operation Neighborhood Watchdog was born, an old man sting operation fueled by spite and a deep love of fairness. We staged the perfect decoy violation at the Kingsley's house. Trash cans out for 3 days, inflatable flamingo with sunglasses, sprinklers running during watering restrictions, basically a greatest hits album of HOA rage. We hid a tiny camera inside the flamingo's sunglasses aimed at the walkway, because yes, we fought surveillance with better surveillance. Then we needed access to Karen's real base, her garage command post, so we used the HOA fundraiser disco night as cover. I swear I'm not making this up. Karen organized a disco fundraiser to restore community unity, and it turned into a chaotic dance party with glow sticks, fog machine, and a guy named Greg who brought his own disco ball and claimed he once dated Donna Summer. While everybody danced under the lights, our little crew slipped out, Mr. Dawson, retired stage magician who could pick locks with a paperclip and gum, Nina from across the street who'd gone viral sneaking her emotional support goose into an airport, and Dee the cat lady with 11 feral cats and a lifelong grudge against Karen for inappropriate meowing violations. They got in. They cracked a locked filing cabinet in under 5 minutes. They found spreadsheets tracking fines, money that didn't match the HOA reports, receipts for surveillance purchases under fake labels like decorative enhancements, and a thumb drive literally labeled insurance, Karen only. When Grandpa plugged that drive in later, the room went quiet. Audio files of private conversations recorded from inside homes. Personal info, birthdays, social security numbers, employment data, digital profiles like Karen was building her own little citizen database. It wasn't just power-hungry, it was predatory. But Grandpa wanted one final piece, something live, undeniable, a moment where Karen couldn't hide behind paperwork. So we planted a fake letter, addressed to Grandpa, saying we were selling the house to a developer planning to build a duplex, left it at the edge of the Kingsley's trash can, folded just right for a snooper. That night the flamingo camera caught her. Karen Delaney, HOA president, rifling through mail like a raccoon in pearls, pocket light on, snapping photos. The next morning we got a fresh HOA notice on our door citing structural instability concerns and threatening violations for selling without community consultation. She'd acted on stolen mail and threatened us with bylaws based on a lie. We called a community meeting in the park. Dozens showed up, lawn chairs, lemonade, righteous anger. Karen arrived last, smug, until Grandpa started laying it all out, photos, audio, financial reports, and then the video of her digging through the mail. Her face cycled through pale, red, and this weird gray-white like her brain was buffering. She tried yelling doctored evidence, but nobody cared anymore. And right when it felt like she might slime her way out, a voice spoke up from the back, quiet, shaky but firm. Julia, Karen's former assistant. She stepped forward holding her own folder. "I helped her," Julia said, eyes glossy. "I kept backups. I can prove everything." That was the twist nobody saw coming, the polite background person turning into the nail in the coffin. Karen didn't even deny it. She just turned and walked away, silent, like a kingdom collapsing without a single trumpet. Sheriff Dale had been watching from the shade, like he was enjoying a free show. He came over, took the thumb drive, the files, Karen's keys, and that's when the whole neighborhood exhaled for the first time in years. But here's the part that hit me later. Sitting on the porch with Grandpa while the trucks got hauled away, justice didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like relief. Like you'd been clenching your jaw for so long you forgot what relaxed muscles felt like. Grandpa said something that stuck with me, not like a speech, more like an old truth he didn't want to admit he'd learned the hard way. "People think order comes from rules," he muttered, watching the tow lights flash. "But real order comes from trust, and the minute one person starts collecting leverage instead of building neighbors, that ain't order, that's fear with paperwork." And yeah, I get it now. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules, she was manufacturing compliance, turning tiny mistakes into chains, making everyone feel like they were always one complaint away from losing everything. The scary part is it worked, for a long time, because everyone stayed quiet to keep the peace. After she fell, the neighborhood got lighter. People waved again. Kids rode bikes without that weird hush. Somebody left their recycling bin out on the wrong day. on purpose, like a little victory flag. Of course Karen wasn't done. Because karma has a sense of humor, and villains love an encore. At a block party that weekend, music, bounce house, Grandpa wearing an aluminum pie tin crown like he was the king of suburbia, we heard this mechanical buzzing overhead. People froze. A sleek drone hovered, blinking light, tiny camera pointed right at us. Someone yelled, "Is that Karen?" And half the neighborhood ducked like we were in an action movie. Grandpa didn't flinch. He grabbed a loaf of French bread from the snack table, aimed, and launched it like a javelin. Didn't hit the drone, not even close, but the crowd cheered anyway, because sometimes the point isn't winning, it's refusing to be scared. The drone zipped away and Grandpa's eyes stayed hard. "She doesn't need a title to be a menace," he said later, calm as ever. "She'll try again." He was right. Anonymous notes started showing up, fake violations, and signed warnings, that same handwriting like a fingerprint. So Grandpa built one last trap, fake construction project, cones, caution tape, exaggerated zoning documents left right where a nosy psycho would look. When the drone came back to scan the papers, we were ready. Net launcher hidden in a lawn gnome. Because of course it was. I hit the trigger. Net flew. Drone dropped into the grass like a wounded bird. We opened it on the kitchen table. Memory card inside with videos, notes, and drafts of new HOA orders Karen had been crafting like she was trying to run a shadow government out of spite. Grandpa printed every one of those fake violations, tied them with a red ribbon, put them in a cake box, and left it on her porch before dawn with a note taped to the lid. "Next time, try frosting." 2 weeks later her car was gone. No for sale sign, no goodbye, just empty windows and silence. The kind of silence that finally feels like victory. Months later, cleaning out the garage, finally just a garage again, we found a metal lunchbox wedged behind the water heater. Inside was a cassette tape labeled, "For When It's Over." Grandpa played it on an old player, and Karen's voice crackled through, listing grievances like a villain's farewell monologue. "You'll miss me," she said. "This neighborhood will fall apart without someone keeping it in line." Grandpa laughed so hard he had to sit down. Then he rewound it, listened again, and tossed it into the trash like it was nothing. "She's wrong," he said, quiet now. "We don't need someone keeping us in line, we just need to know we can count on each other." And honestly, that's the part one keep thinking about. Because it's easy to laugh at an HOA tyrant until you realize how often people hand power to the loudest person in the room just to avoid conflict. How fear gets dressed up as order. How rules become weapons when nobody questions the hand holding the clipboard. So here's what I want to ask you. Where's the line between keeping a community orderly and straight up controlling people? And if someone crosses that line, is it justice to fight back dirty? Or does that make you part of the problem too? Drop your take in the comments. Seriously, tell me if you think Grandpa was a hero or a menace. And if you've ever dealt with a Karen in real life, what did you do? And did karma ever show up? Or did you have to build your own net launcher in a lawn gnome to make it happen?